Welcome to the What is Life Dude podcast. We're your hosts, Eric and Sarah. I'm a freelance musician.
And I'm a vegan chef and food blogger. This is where we share our thoughts about building a healthy relationship, working as creatives on our own terms, and living with intention and authenticity.
We don't have it all figured out yet, but every conversation gets us a little closer to answering the question, what is life, dude? Hello, and welcome back to the What is Life Dude podcast, everybody.
Welcome back.
Oh yeah, I'm Eric, Sarah.
Hi.
I messed up my intro today, but we're just going to roll with it.
Today is actually the second time we're filming this podcast episode. There have been a few episodes like this in the past where we just weren't satisfied with the conversation and we decided to redo it.
Yeah, we did this conversation yesterday, basically exactly 24 hours ago, actually. Right before the Super Bowl, we were going to try and cram it in, before the game started, because I wanted to watch it. And that's actually a big part of our conversation today. There were a few things that happened yesterday after the podcast that related to our conversation and kind of expanded on it, that made us say, well, we should just do this episode again with this new information. Right? That's accurate, right?
Yeah, it was a couple things too. We were dealing with a little bit of a family miscommunication that was stressing us out. We were dealing with the time limit. Yeah. And we ended up talking about, some societal things, some capitalism things. And I have this issue where I guess it's not really an issue. It's a normal human reaction to dealing with frustrating topics, but if you watch the footage, I'm just getting progressively sweatier and hotter and more fidgety throughout the whole thing. I take off my sweatshirt at some point because I'm just so agitated. Yeah. And I felt like we got a little bit circular, and I like to bring a podcast to you guys that ends up making you at least feel a little better at the end, hopefully. Not that I have any problem with being vulnerable or that I feel like I always need to have all the answers, but...
I mean, even just talking about what our experience was like yesterday and doing it again right now. I mean, like you said, we do the podcast to bring something that is good for everybody, us included. So that's why in the past when we've had episodes where we don't feel good about it, I think during the first run of the podcast years ago, the episodes that are no longer available online, we did a bunch of episodes where we were like, we don't really feel good about that, but we're trying to start a podcast, and you have to be consistent when you're trying to do anything where you're creating any kind of content. And we just kind of put them out, and it just, looking back on it, it felt so bad, but we did it because that's what like I said, that's what you're supposed to do. And now, if we don't feel good after the podcast, how are you guys supposed to have benefited from it? So it's worth it to take the extra hour and a half to film it again and bring something that we all like. I feel much more alert and more like myself today anyway. And like you said yesterday, our conversation, it was cyclical and circular. We were saying a whole bunch, but not really making any progress.
Yeah, I was talking so fast. And I don't even know how my brain was functioning that fast, because typically when I'm anxious, I get a little bit foggy brained. But yesterday I felt so sharp, but it was like I could not harness my thoughts and my emotions in a way that was good.
You couldn't wrangle them into coherency.
So, well, that's a great way of putting it. I like
you.
that. Poetic.
I'm trying not to smile because I feel proud that you liked that, but I can't help it. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this grin.
Yes. I also feel as if we talked so much yesterday on the podcast and then afterwards that you might be able to tell my voice is a little bit tired. Yeah. So maybe you'll take the reins on this episode.
Your voice is much more sensitive to that.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
That's another thing, is when I get heated with a topic, I start yelling without noticing it. And my voice is burnt out. So I've got lots of beverages here. Got some coconut water, my new obsession, and I'm drinking some weird cacao beverage.
What is it? Just a quick, what's in there?
There's cacao and maca and some vegan collagen stuff and some reishi mushroom and some sugies.
You know, it doesn't taste like that. It doesn't taste that far away from hot chocolate.
Yeah.
It just tastes like you call it a healthy hot chocolate.
There's a lot of stuff in it.
It's good.
Yeah. I'm trying to move a little bit away from coffee because I had coffee yesterday. That's no doubt part of the reason why I felt so
we had caffeinated
frantic.
coffee yesterday morning, didn't we? Mm-hmm. We've been drinking a lot of decaf mostly.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. This is how you know Sarah is in control of the hot beverages, the daily morning hot beverage.
I am the beverage keeper.
Because I don't know even what I'm drinking, just that it tastes good. So, do you want to do a little positivity box?
Yes.
Before we go into it?
That's a good way to start this episode, I think.
Yeah. I feel like I have a few, and I don't... Can I go first?
Are you going to talk about our move?
No, actually. I thought that was just going to be a whole... That'll be our joint positivity box.
Okay.
But mine is... I listened to The Martian by Andy Weir. That was a book I listened to a week or two ago. I finished. And then I went on Audible and I bought that author's next book called Artemis. And it was one of those things where I really wanted to enjoy it because I really liked the previous book he had written. And I just couldn't get into it. Like with The Martian and the book I had read before that, I was taking time out of the day to not do anything else and lay in bed listening to my book because I was so excited about it. And I just didn't get that feeling from Artemis. And so my positivity box is that Sarah and I talked about it and I made the decision to stop listening, return it, and buy a book that I would be more interested in, which is the first book of the Hunger Games series, which I feel mildly self-conscious about because it's like a young adult book. But I've come to terms with, I think any book that features characters that are young adult aged ends up getting more characterized as a book for young adults.
Yes.
But so far, I'm an hour or so in, and I really like it. So my positivity box is... I decided to return the book I didn't really like, and now I have another one that I'm super into, and I feel excited about listening to it again, and not like I'm forcing myself to. So that's mine.
I'm always very pushy with Eric about getting him to drop things he isn't super passionate about, like even if it's as small as a book or something he's eating, because, I mean... We might do another episode in the future about the human design system, which is a little bit woo-woo. But if you know your human design type, Eric's a manifesting generator. And that's just one of those key aspects.
We're going to do an episode about human design with one of the listeners of our podcast who reads human design charts for a living.
Yeah.
So we know you're listening. I'll DM you again. And after we move, I'm assuming, is when we'll do this episode. Yeah. Once everything's settled again.
I think it's interesting that you feel self-conscious about it because I feel like so many people are constantly rereading Harry Potter. I don't know, like over the quarantine, I feel like so many people have posted Instagram stories and stuff like, oh, I'm rereading Harry Potter or something.
That is interesting, yeah.
And also, nobody feels shame about watching like the Hunger Games films or young adult books that have been turned into film. I just think it's so interesting that books are that thing that...
Yeah, I don't know why the book seems to be... The book feels more like a young adult novel.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't seem... The movie's just another movie, I feel. Yeah. I don't know. I think I always thought The Hunger Games was a book for teenage girls.
Oh.
You know? But it's not.
Yeah.
I understand that now.
Yeah.
And even if it was, I'm allowed to enjoy it.
I'm glad you do too. It's very cute.
Thanks.
My positivity box. I'm not sure that I have one.
Is it just the fact that we're redoing the episode?
Yeah, I'm glad we are. I feel much... It's weird because I also feel very kind of sick today. I woke up with, a headache and my knee has been doing some weird things. I just don't know. Like I was gonna say I'm at that age where everything's just falling apart.
Not yet.
I'm 29, but
no.
My knee. I've been like hobbling around. I'm like the universe must just be telling me to sit down and rest. So I took a long nap, and I guess my positivity box is having to do a little bit with the fact that we're moving in a month. And Eric is very, very good at practical, everyday human things, whereas I'm not, as you may know. They overwhelm me. And I took a little nap, and Eric was setting up our internet connection at the new place and doing talking to a representative with our moving system. So
yeah, the pods people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the overarching joint positivity box is we electronically signed our lease for a new place in Fort Collins, Colorado. Address is no, just kidding. Just kidding. But my social security number is no. So we signed our lease, and I talked to our new landlord on the phone. And everything we're really happy about the place we chose and the amount of time we plan on living there. And it's just all, I felt extremely anxious the other night.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you remembered that, but it was 2 nights ago.
I do remember.
Yeah, rarely do I get that anxious my anxiety is defined by very specific things usually. I think I've talked about it on the podcast. If we're in the park and I'm out on a run, let's say I'm exactly halfway done with the loop, sometimes I get this feeling that because I'm as far away from my car in the parking lot as I can be in this loop, I get this feeling of being very far away, and I don't even know if unsafe is the right word. But things like that, feeling out of control of situations on a very visceral level, being stuck in traffic makes me very anxious. Those are the causes of my anxiety usually. So the other night we were just hanging out, and I got overwhelmed with anxiety, and it was I didn't go into panic attack mode or anything, but it was very odd and out of the ordinary.
Right.
But really it all boils down to I was thinking too much about, when is this guy going to give us our lease? Are we going to sign it? Did they find someone else and we have to go look for another place? All of these thoughts were coming to me. And really, the overarching aspect is I felt out of control of that situation.
Yes.
And that was giving me anxiety. So it's really all the same for me.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it manifests itself in different situations. But now I feel much better now that we know we're moving into this place we really love, and we have the moving set up, we have the internet set up, and we can kind of just pack up and go.
Yeah.
Which is going to be much, much easier than last time.
Yeah. I think it's so funny how different you and I are. And this is another thing that goes back to human design and us being different energy types, and you being this person. I'll leave for a moment. I'll go downstairs to the kitchen, and Eric will be working on all these little tasks and setting everything, putting all his ducks in a row, putting all of our collective ducks in a row, as they say, as the case may be.
Our vegan ducks.
And then I'll come back up, and he'll give me this checklist of things he's accomplished. And he's like, I feel so energized. And for me, doing those things has the exact opposite effect. Every time I have to handle practical stuff, I have to give myself a lot of time. I have to take a half-hour break in between. And I just think it's so funny. And I'm glad that you're on my side. You're on my team. So yeah.
I'm working with you and not against you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy too. Can I say one more positivity box type thing? So since I've been, it's weird. This is the one downside, in my opinion, of re-recording an episode about the same topic, is that I'm saying things and I can't remember if I said them on the last podcast episode that we published or yesterday during the episode that we're not going to publish.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing. But what I was going to say is I recently started teaching virtual lessons to kids. I've spoken about this. We're doing very beginner level music production stuff online. And it's kind of given me the confidence, even after just doing 2 classes with the kids, it's given me the confidence to say, I think I'm going to start offering guitar lessons and music production lessons for adults. And I think I used to think that only kids took lessons, and then realized that that's just really not true. You were taking voice lessons for a while.
I was taking piano lessons too.
And piano lessons
years
first.
ago.
So, yeah, and Sarah's been telling me for a while that I should try to, or think about being a one-on-one tutor for these kinds of things. Yeah. And now after doing the kids' classes, I'm like, yeah, I can definitely do this. Mm-hmm. So I just put it out there on Instagram, and I've got a few people like, oh, I might be interested in guitar lessons. And I put a post on Reddit in one of the music production communities, and I got a few people say, oh, I might be interested in that. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited. Yeah. It seems like such a cool opportunity, and I feel like teaching people one-on-one will be so rewarding for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Eric's such a great people person, you know?
It's a little frustrating with the kids because they're kids, and I want to teach them so much more, but they don't care or would understand.
Right.
So that's why the prospect of teaching music production to adults who have been messing around on their own.
And it's their money, so they're actually invested.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I have so many little tips and tricks and nuggets of things I've learned working in a studio. I just want to share them with people, and making YouTube videos about informational music production things. It just doesn't feel as fulfilling.
Well, because I think that another part of your personality,
I love interacting with people.
You need to like bounce things off of someone who's there. Like you thrive off of people reacting to what you're putting out.
Yeah.
So,
which is why the podcast works, because I function much better after hearing what you have to say and going back and forth.
Yeah, it's great. Another example of how different we are, because I hope to never do one-on-one. Like, we'll get into this because this is part of the topic of our lesson today, our episode today. But let's just pivot now.
Okay, pivot, baby.
I wanted to kind of reopen this conversation about rest that we started over the past 2 episodes, and we talked at length about it in our yesterday episode that has been lost to time.
Lost it. It's technically still on the hard drive.
Delete it. So I wanted to talk about this new system for how Eric and I spend our leisure time alone and together.
Have you always said leisure?
Leisure. Mm-hmm.
You sound like Frasier. I feel like Frasier and Niles would say leisure.
Yeah, I think so too.
I love you too. That was my Niles impersonation, if you're a Frasier fan.
I love it. So I'm like trying to remember what we said yesterday, because there were some good pieces of that conversation, and I'm also feeling the need to continuously clear my throat because my voice is tired. Sorry, guys. But we went through this period of time after Eric finally left his previous job, and he was finally working from home and doing all the freelance stuff, where we really just wanted to spend as much time as possible together. You know, he moved his studio from the basement upstairs, and we had our desks across from each other at the start of quarantine in our living room. And so we would work across from each other, and then we would go and do our little jog together, and then we'd go hiking together. And then in our spare time, we would watch television together, mostly Survivor and K-dramas, and some Tiger King.
Well,
just all of these different little segments of quarantine are demarcated by what we were watching at the time.
I find it so funny how you and I generally tend to hate things that are really popular, like shows. Shows it's the best example. There are a lot of things that are recommended for Netflix and whatnot, and we watch them, and everyone's talking about it, and we're like, we don't like this at all. And that happens a lot. And it's funny that Tiger King is one of the things that we ended up watching all 7 or 8 episodes of. Like, everyone was talking about Tiger King, and I just totally expected us to be like, this is ridiculous. We don't want to watch this. Yeah. But I remember I was enthralled, and we were eating Ben & Jerry's.
I was just going to mention that. Were you? Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you also remember.
Just these different eras within the era of COVID.
It's been almost an entire year.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculously insane.
It feels like it's dragged on forever, and also that time was accelerated within it. Like, we did go through so much learning and so many different stages. Like, I just remember watching Tiger King and eating a bunch of garbage.
Yep.
You know? And now we're like, you know, we've moved on.
When we have two different pints of Ben and Jerry's out at the same time, you know we're going through some shit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going.
So yeah, we definitely went through that period of just really wanting to do everything together because we missed each other from like Eric working weird and long hours, you know, for the prior years since we were living together.
Yeah.
And I look back on those times fondly, but once we moved here and, you know, there's other people in our house, there's 2 other people and a pooch and a pooch. And I was starting to notice that I was just always feeling burnt out. Like, I would be burnt out from work, but then when I had time between projects to kind of decompress, I was just starting to feel like my mind was cluttered and it wasn't clearing out, and I wasn't coming back to like a restful sort of baseline. And I think I realized it was because I'm very used to spending time alone, very introverted. And it's like they say, introverts recharge their batteries by being in solitude. And that's very much the case for me. It's very hard for me to get lonely because I would, if I could, just spend all my time just studying things that I care about and making art and cooking. And I'm that person. And we had a pretty big house that was arguably way too big for us before in Colorado. So there was plenty of space for me to kind of just be alone, like recenter myself, kind of clear out my aura, as they say. Who's they? I don't know. Me, mostly I say that.
You say that, yeah.
And I wasn't getting that here. And then we'd be spending a lot of time watching TV, which I'm not knocking, and I still think it's possible for us to have a healthy relationship with television, but I don't know, we were just spending time together that felt not restful, and it didn't feel like quality time, you know? So,
what we've currently, I was trying to find a good time to take over for you so you can rest.
So I can hydrate?
Rest and hydrate. So what we've been doing recently is Sarah has, next to her side of the bed, she has her little floor desk, which I'm pretty sure we've talked about. It's just this, if you're watching, you can see my hands. It's like this wide or this long and only like this tall. Yeah. So Sarah just sits on the ground, and it's a good height for her to have her computer on.
It's like a tray that you would use to feed someone breakfast in bed is what it is. Yeah. It's not like a miniature desk.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's true. It's just
it's a desk tiny for American Girl dolls. You know?
It's a tiny play table. But Sarah loves being on the floor, as you know. So she works down there next to her side of the bed, and she'll be studying astrology or human design or watching videos. Well, watching videos is part of studying both those things. And the other night you were watching a stretching video, and you were doing a little stretching routine over there. Right. And then I'll be either at my desk or in the bed watching a movie or learning about cryptocurrency, which is the new thing I'm interested in. And man, I'll tell you, it's so much nicer to be thinking and learning about cryptocurrency instead of like politics like I had been. I feel excited instead of upset at it. So we'll be doing these two very separate things, but in the same room. And every now and then we'll stop. If one of us gets up to go pee or something, we'll give the other one a smooch on our way by. And yeah, it's just been this very nice way to spend time apart, but also we're in the same place still.
Yeah, I feel like it's very common, and it's definitely happened in past relationships too, where like you're kind of, I don't know, if you don't have like a really, I don't know what the word is. Like if you're kind of insecure and you feel like I need to be doing I need to be involved in everything the other person is doing. Then again, you end up spending time together that doesn't feel like it's really quality time. It's like you're just doing it so that you're not separate, and you're trying to get closer by doing it, but you're not. And then, so Eric really loves watching movies, is what I've recently discovered, and I don't.
Which I discovered a long time ago.
Right. I have a short attention span, and there's very few movies that I really, really love. And if we watch movies together, we usually will watch them over 2 nights or like over a couple different sessions in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's just how Sarah is. She just doesn't like watching a full 2-hour movie at one time.
Right.
And it took me a while to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I've always had this kind of, oh, it's a movie, you watch it in one sitting. I'm sure other people feel that way too.
Right.
But I've come to terms with the fact that it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll watch the other half tomorrow.
Yeah. So what we've been doing for years is we would just try to find like a movie that we would both like, which is hard because we don't like the same things. Like, it's a miracle that we find TV shows that we both love.
Well, in our defense, there are a metric butt ton of TV shows and movies, but I mean, there are new TV shows on Netflix every day.
Right. So we try to find a movie. I was going to say movie that I would enjoy, and then we'd start watching it, and I'd get bored, and I'd fall asleep, or I'd be on my phone, and then Eric would be like,
you're not
watching. I'm like, oh, you made me watch this.
Yeah. And I'm like, I wanted to spend time with you. That's why I put the movie on. And you're like, but I don't like movies.
Yeah. So we finally were like, what if you just watch all of the movies that you love, that I would never want to watch? I mean, list a few of the ones you've watched over the past couple weeks.
I watched The Big Short. I watched Captain Phillips last night.
Oh my God. That was intense.
What else have I watched? We watched
Interstellar.
Oh yeah, Interstellar, Gravity, The Martian.
You went through a space phase. Eric
Well, it's because I was reading The Martian, and I had to rewatch the movie.
Yeah.
After I had read the book.
I keep saying Eric's son is in his 11th house. You got that Aquarian sort of vibe in that house. So he's like, oh, I love like technology and space and crypto.
I do have like a weird small affinity for that kind of thing, but it's not a huge part of my personality.
Right.
Interesting.
It's like where you nerd out though,
Yeah. Well, astrology has me once again correctly.
So it's been great because I don't have to neither of us has to compromise, right? Yeah. Like he'll be watching a movie that he's absolutely like engrossed in. By the way, yesterday he was watching Captain Phillips, which can you give like a 1 or 2 line explanation? It's a true story.
Yeah, it's based on a true story starring Tom Hanks. It's about the captain of this freight ship that has to go around the Horn of Africa, past Somalia, where they're known to be pirates. And his ship gets taken over by 4 Somalian pirates, and he has to compromise and negotiate and keep him and his crew alive until the U.S. Navy can step in. Mm-hmm. It was gripping, and I've heard it was pretty accurate.
Every time I've looked up from my studies at your jaw was just like, you looked so absorbed in it.
Well, it's because So last episode I talked about The Wolf of Wall Street and how I was so excited to watch it because I'm learning more about finance and stocks and all those things. And then I watched the first hour of it, and it was mostly about Jordan Belfort, the main character, also based on a real guy. It's about him he was making a lot of money on Wall Street doing crooked things, but the movie was mostly about drugs and like naked women. And I don't like that sort of thing. Yeah. I want things that I like action, but I like action that has more value, like more emotional stock in it. So that's why, there's fighting in Captain Phillips and blood and shooting and whatnot, but it's in this context of something that was really emotional for me and not just... I understand a lot of people like watching movies like Wolf of Wall Street because they enjoy seeing people just do a bunch of drugs and have sex on camera.
Or they are more appreciative of like its place in the story, Yeah. I think some people don't always have this need to like deeply relate to.
Yeah, of course.
I always want to, if I'm watching a film, I have to have a protagonist that I can relate to or it's not really enjoyable to me. I hate TV and film or literature where I just hate everyone.
Yep.
Like that's when totally peaked out.
And I think the reason I liked Captain Phillips so much is because it had the exact opposite effect, where I liked everyone, even the bad guys, because the Somalian pirates in real life, they don't have, there's nothing else to do when you come from these villages on the coast of Somalia. And of course I learned this after the movie, but they used to be fishing villages, and then all the fish were basically fished by Europe in that area. So they've since resorted to having gangs and warlords and sending people out and pirating ships. So all these guys are they're just doing it because they have nothing, they have no other choice. This is the only way they can make money and not die. So I liked everyone in the film because I felt bad for everyone. It's just a generally bad situation, and it's not anyone's fault. Whereas Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, he's just a bad guy. Yeah, he's just a bad guy. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't need to watch this shit. It just makes me feel bad.
Right.
So
I think that's a good choice for you to turn that one off. And
thank you. Me
of
too.
what I saw of it, I was disturbed, but
it just, I've learned if something's not bringing me value, I don't need to just watch it to say, oh, I watched Wolf of Wall Street and here's what no, I watched some of it, I hated it, and I turned it off, and I felt better after I turned it off.
Right.
Sue me, Leo.
Yeah. It's that sunk cost bias, right? Even if you've put some time or energy or investment into something, you can always turn around because there's not always going to be a payoff if you just persevere.
Correct.
So I think that's been an important thing for you to learn.
I feel like this is the opposite of yesterday's conversation so far. Yeah. I feel like everything's nicely flowing into each other, into other things, as is usually the case on the podcast.
Right. So to bring this back to the overarching, is it overarching or overarching?
I say overarching, but truthfully, I don't know.
Right. Topic of rest. I think, so what we've learned is that, whenever I had a huge project that I had just concluded, I would say, all right, I'm going to give myself some time to rest. And I think that a lot of people assume that rest has to be a certain subset of things, like watching TV or lying in bed or whatever. And I think I kind of assumed oh yeah, if I'm watching TV all day, I'm going to feel rested. And that's how I spent a lot of I don't know, I would just feel so burnt out that I wouldn't really want to do anything productive. I think it's kind of hard. Burnout is that thing that really drains your energy and makes it hard to remember what you love, because I would talk for years about how, I really need to get back into making music. I need to make music every single day. And I love writing. I want to write a poetry book one day. I wonder when I'll do that. I should get some art supplies and paint. I always used to love that as a kid. And then I'd have that spare time and I just have no energy. And then I'd end up watching TV. Then, the weekend would pass or whatever, the equivalent of a weekend, because when you're self-employed, it's very hard to, maintain those boundaries. And I'd be like, why don't I feel rested? I feel so exhausted still. I'm not ready to go back to working, but I didn't do anything for a few days. Why don't I feel rested? And I think the biggest thing we've been learning recently is sometimes even more so than doing nothing or doing something super lazy, you can really draw a lot of energy and rest from just kind of pushing yourself to do things you like. For me, that's been just studying, which is weird because, right, I feel like that is the opposite of a lot of people's idea of rest. But just for me to have time to read or listen to YouTube videos about topics that I love, I just love it so much. I think it's crazy, Eric and I having spent years together, trying to achieve closeness and a more stable relationship in one way that felt a little bit more conventional. And actually, it's almost counterintuitive in that the more time we've spent doing things separately and the more excited we get about those little areas of passion for ourselves, then when we come back together and we have a conversation or we go on a walk and we're talking, each of us just has so much that we're excited to talk about. And it just leads to a lot of really good and new conversations rather than like, I feel like part of the stagnancy we were experiencing before we left Colorado was just like, things just felt bad and we couldn't figure out like, what can we do to get out of this, like this pattern, this cycle. And I felt, and this was why I was so frustrated. I could feel like this circular pattern. I could feel myself coming up against the same issue over and over again and the same feeling over and over again. And it was driving me crazy. I was like, if I can't keep doing this, I don't know. Yeah. And I just think it's so cool that we've just, I don't know if it's like being here in San Diego or living with other people and that being our wake-up call as to like, oh, we need to like do things separately sometimes, like other than work, right? Like, I don't know, I guess that's part of one of the benefits of kind of being put in this somewhat uncomfortable situation, living situation, right? Not that it's like bad, but it's like two adults living with your family again can be challenging.
I mean, and during the COVID times, I mean, we're not confined to our room, but we have one room where all of our stuff is, and then the rest of our stuff is in the kitchen, right? It's all cooking stuff. So we're confined to, yes, it's a big room. We have a bathroom. It's nice. I'm very comfortable in this room, but it's still only one room. And I mean, unless you're someone who lives in a studio apartment in LA or New York, I'm sorry, I feel bad for you. But it's not a lot of space. So normally okay, well, at least we can get out of the house, right? But we can't go anywhere. Yeah. And
we do go on a lot of walks, but
we go on walks and we go to Target and the grocery store.
There's a lot of people everywhere, you know?
Yeah. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
That's one huge reason I think we're so excited to be moving back to a bit of a lot of a smaller town, just to be able to have a little bit more space to ourselves. Like we realized the other day, like we don't even listen to music anymore because we used to have our Echoes wired up in our kitchen, our living room, and we just listened to music while we were making dinner. And we don't do that because we are sharing a kitchen now, and we don't want to annoy everyone by looping Billy Joel for 24 hours.
Even though your family does love Billy Joel.
They do.
I mean, your family is the reason I like Billy Joel, right? Because you grew up with him, and I didn't, and now I listen to him and I love him. Yeah. But yeah.
And I realized, like, back at home, back in Colorado, Eric would be doing some work. And I'd be, filming a video or prepping ingredients to film a video or doing whatever, and I'd be singing. Yeah. And I just sing all the time when I have the space to. And I haven't been singing. The only time I've really been singing is when I do my voice lessons or if you and I practice. And I'm like, I feel so disconnected from just that part of me that's so important. Like, that's actually so important.
Do you think you're going to listen to music and sing in the car on the drive back to Colorado?
No.
You don't do that. You strictly listen to
I did
books
on
and
the
podcasts?
I did on the way to Colorado the first time. I was listening to Post Malone's album at the time, I remember.
You listened to one of my albums.
I did.
One of my old ones.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
You want me to shout it out?
No. Which one was it? Write the link in the description.
I Don't Want to Be Alone.
Okay, so it was that one. Cool. Yeah, I noticed on a road trip out here that I would be listening to a podcast, and then at some point I would feel so irritated and not know why. And then something would click and I'd be like, it's because I want to listen to music instead. Yeah. And then I'd switch and the same thing would kind of happen where I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. And I'd go back and forth. Yeah. I'm kind of excited to drive back. I know I'm kind of taking a detour. Haha, pun intended. But we've decided to go the southern route back to Colorado through Phoenix and Albuquerque.
Avoid some winter mountains.
Yeah, we don't want to drive over the Rocky Mountains in early spring.
We don't want to get Rocky Mountain High.
We don't. Well, we're gonna once we get there. But yeah, so I'm just excited to take a different route there and see some new stuff and have it be a totally different experience.
Me too.
I'm excited to see our friends.
Yeah.
We talked about that I would probably miss them. And everyone was like...
And you were like, oh, be fine. And then when we were considering moving to Pacific Northwest, I was like, Eric, aren't you going to miss your friends? And you're like, I can make new friends. And you're like, but that doesn't mean you have to. I mean, you can make new friends still, you know? But you can have your old ones too.
Yeah.
You can have your cake, your friendship cake, and eat it too. And buy more cake.
I mean, I'm excited for my birthday over the summer.
Oh, I'm excited to make cupcakes on your birthday and then completely disappear during the festivities.
I haven't asked him yet, but we're going to ask our friends, Travis and Victoria, if we can have a little birthday party for me in their backyard in Boulder, because we're not going to have a backyard at our new place. We're going to have a patio. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're not going to have everyone inside unless something magically happens before August.
One hopes it does.
I'll text Travis and ask him if we can have a party in his backyard.
Yeah. My sister was just reading through the news this morning, and then she just reads a headline out loud. It's time to start double masking. I'm like, oh, we're never...
What is happening? Can we please just figure this out and make it stop?
Yeah.
I mean, and we're fortunate people who have never been sick, and we don't know people who have been extremely afflicted by it. Mm-hmm. Ah, man. Yeah. Anyway... Where do you want to go next? Do you want to take a little pause?
Sure.
And we can regroup and keep going with other things. But first, do our supporter shout out. Hi guys, we're pausing this conversation for a few moments to give a big thank you to our supporters. These are our listeners who make a monthly contribution through Anchor, which is our hosting platform. If you'd like to become a supporter as well, you can visit anchor.fm/whatislifedude and click on the support button.
And if you enjoy the show, another great way to support us is by giving us a positive rating and a review on iTunes. Just takes a few moments and it helps new listeners find the podcast so we can continue to grow our community. So thank you so much to everyone who supports us in one way or another. This podcast wouldn't exist without you guys.
So without further ado, shout out to our Anchor supporters: Inga Pfeiffer, Morgan Lassiter, Jennifer, Scotty Draper, Glenn Ames, Kevin Dooley, Jessica Chelgren, Marie Zimmerman, Nina Schmidt, Izzy, Alexis Dooley, Annalise, Nadia, Teresa Madara, Kelsey Pritchett, Ellis Adler, Quinn, Anna Dureka, Megan Stewart, Samantha McIntyre, Dylan Schaubin, and Sarah Creighton. And now back to the show. And we are back.
We are.
So let's go to what we were talking about over the supporter shout-out break, in which we use the bathroom, usually. We were talking about how we kept mentioning Sarah working and studying, and Sarah was like, I haven't really even explained what I am working on.
Yeah,
Here, scooch in.
I actually decided I want to be a high-level math teacher, so I've just really been brushing up on my...
She's lying.
Multilinear algebra.
False.
Is that a thing?
Multilinear algebra?
It's probably a thing.
I feel like we get so deep into thinking and our topics, and then we do the supporter shout-out, and then we have to like kind of start over, and we're kind of like silly and everything again, and then it takes us time to get back into it.
I mean, I just have to say, I don't think I've ever mentioned this anywhere on any of my social platforms, which is crazy because I bear the depths of my soul, and yet I've never mentioned this, and it affects me so much. I have this condition called hyperhidrosis, which is just excessive sweating, which I feel like a lot of people have, like sweaty armpits and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's with my hands. And my hands are so sweaty right now, and it's so annoying. And there's a treatment that I do to keep it kind of at bay. But I haven't kept up with it because I have been sad. So
do you want to talk about what the treatment is?
It's
because it's pretty interesting, but you don't have to, obviously.
Maybe we'll do an episode that's like random facts about us, like a fun and lighthearted episode.
We could do that.
That being said, this has totally stolen my youth away from me. Yeah, so I'm really sweaty right now, and it's uncomfortable.
It's to the point where her hands are kind of like when you stay in a bathtub too long and they get pruny.
Yeah,
they're almost like that.
I can't stand it.
It's okay. You'll get back on track with your your treatment. It's weird to call it a treatment because it's just like some little silly thing you have to do.
Yeah.
But it is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it is.
So that's what's happening right now.
Usually I would do it when we were watching movies together, and now we don't watch movies together.
Or an episode of Survivor.
Although we are maybe going to watch 13 going on 30.
How did that come up earlier?
I was making some sort of joke about myself being 30 flirty and thriving.
Wow, that was tough.
30 flirting and thriving. And Eric was like, what is that? And I'm like, you don't know?
Yeah.
So then we watched a trailer and
we'll watch it.
Now
seems
I'm
fun.
gonna make him watch this film that has like 69%
nice
positive ratings on Google.
It'll be great. It'll be a fun time. Okay, so let's talk about what you've been studying and learning.
All right. It's no secret, right, that I love astrology.
Correct.
But I usually, when I talk about it, I make light of it because I understand that it's a little bit of a fringe thing, although it's becoming less and less so as we head into whatever century we're heading into or are in.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Numbers, what are they?
You're doing great.
I'm getting nervous, but...
Are you getting nervous?
Like, I really want part of my... Listen. This whole thing where I make money by making recipes and doing sponsorships all the time, it has to stop sometime in my future. I have to be building something else. I haven't been because I've just been in this endless cycle of...
Well, it's what we've talked about. You would do all this work and it would make you feel like shit. And then you'd be like, well, now I can rest up by writing a poetry book.
Yeah.
And you're like, I have no fucking energy to write a poetry book. I start cursing more when we talk about this because it makes me upset. Yeah.
Which is, it's my journey that I've been going through and trying to figure out. And hopefully when I do figure it out, I can help other people do that too. But I don't know what my future career is going to look like. I've been trying to find some sort of way to synthesize everything that I love, which music. I've been learning a lot more about like sound healing and like, I don't know. I'm like starting to dive a little bit deeper into the connection between all these different spiritual disciplines and music. The other day I stumbled across this channel and this lady just does, I think a lot of them are live streamed too, just like live sound healings. And they're like 30 to 40 minutes. And she has a bunch of crystal singing bowls and some other instruments and a loop board so that she can loop, so she can harmonize with herself essentially live. And just, she has hundreds of thousands of views and it's just so many positive comments because like the people seeking out this type of content, right? They're trying to feel better. And I don't know, it's like, it's weird because food is so spiritual to me and it's something I will always love and that's really important. But when you want to reach the biggest audience when it comes to food, it's much more about like making recipes that are easy and really accessible and affordable. And that's what I try to do. And also people really like taste test videos, like tasting all of the new vegan technology that's coming out.
But it's becoming more and more disingenuous for Sarah and I.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're a viewer of Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, we haven't done a taste test of like commercial products in a long time.
Yeah.
And it's mostly because we don't use them that much anymore.
Yeah.
But
people love those videos. People love to see people enjoying, what's the word I want to use? I don't like to say like junk food because I don't ever mean to shame anyone for their food choices. And I don't like to assign, moral value to foods and stuff. Right. And
especially applying moral value to vegan food.
Yeah.
Which is already so based in morality.
Yeah.
Why we and everyone else is vegan.
Yeah.
So to even push it further and be like, oh, well, this vegan food is more morally clean than this vegan food. It's like, come on, we're all on the same team.
Yeah. I don't feel that way at all either. But lately as I've been questioning my relationship with money a lot and questioning capitalism a lot and trying to go more low waste. And I really want to get to a point, at some point where I am able to grow a lot of my own food and where I can use my money at farmers markets and supporting small businesses and stuff. Like, in my ideal future, I don't really even shop at a grocery store, you know, because I want to be able to, I want to think like really small. Like, I want to be supporting small businesses as often as I can, because I feel like that's the way to save the planet and each other, you know? Yep. So, but you know, I don't want to also go on my channel and like assume that that's easily accessible for everyone, or, you know, pressure other people to do it either. So it's been hard to kind of try to start pivoting in that direction where everything is from scratch and everything is, you know, it's just been hard to switch focus. I don't know. I feel like because I do this for a living, I recognize how privileged I am that I have the time to make staples from scratch and to spend time researching where I can get my food in like compostable packaging and stuff. I just understand there's so many layers, and it's like it's hard to like strike that balance between making content that's true to me and also that's accessible and helpful to people. So my ideal situation is that like Sarah's Vegan Kitchen just becomes kind of a creative outlet for me again, like it was in the past, but it's not what I have to do. I don't have to depend on it to make my living. Right?
So every now and then you show up with a video like, oh, Sarah posted.
Or maybe like taking the pressure of having to make money on that platform would allow me to upload all the time, you know, but in just a less stressful way, in a less, I don't know. I just feel like when you're stressed in the process of creating things, it definitely comes through, and people can tell, and people will ask me like, are you doing okay? I hope you're doing okay. So like ideally I'd be able to still share about the way I'm passionate about food on that channel, but take money out of the picture.
Yeah.
And I am wanting to move towards some sort of career where I'm working with people and teaching them about these systems that I really care about, astrology being one of them, which is crazy, having been someone who is such a doubter my entire life. And then like in this like rock bottom, I've gone through so many rock bottoms. Do I even call them that anymore? Just one of my little sad girl blips, you know.
I don't think you're giving it enough credit as a serious thing by calling it a sad girl blip, but me and the rest of the audience, we know what you mean.
Right. I mean, we diffuse discomfortable situations with humor sometimes.
Trust me, I know I've been doing it my whole life.
Yeah. So I was just going... I was going through like that sad time, and I came across this podcast, Expanded Podcast, which I talk about all the time, and I will continuously sing its praises. But through interviews on that podcast with Jenna Zoe and Danny Beinstein, I got into human design was the first thing I was really interested in. And then afterwards, I got into astrology, and I've gone way, way deeper in my studies with that. So it's like in just the past 2 years, I've gone from being like, oh, this is just a cool little way to a lens through which to, you know, get some extra information about my life and my psyche and maybe what could help. And now it's like, it's so important to me. Not in like a, I can tell your future sort of way, or like...
Not yet.
Right. Or I know a lot of people get annoyed by astrology because they see people using like their sign as an excuse to not kind of
be a good person.
Yeah.
So people would be like, "Oh, sorry, I was so rude to you and ordered you to take my food back."
Yeah.
In my head, I was talking to a waiter.
Yeah.
To be rude to people and say, "Oh, it's not my fault. I'm an Aries."
Yeah.
And just like insert any astrological sign instead in place of Aries, and that's not how astrology works.
Right. So I've just been digging deep here. It's a full on like discipline that I've been studying. I have so many books, and I'm doing like the psychological kind of approach to it. So it feels very familiar to me because my major is in psychology and a lot of like archetypal stuff as well. So actually I've been reading more about like Carl Jung and his little connection to astrology, and
You're like Niles.
Yes. Which is crazy because it's like timed. Everything in the universe is just timed so weirdly. You know, all of these weird synchronicities. And then when you realize that some of the synchronicities are just the fact that your iPhone is listening to you, and when they serve you an ad about something that you just talked about,
like the adult diapers.
Yes. So that's what I've been deep into, and it's interesting to talk about because I'm not used to talking about it without apologizing or being like, oh, just humor me for a second. Let me just talk to you about this thing.
I know it's woo-woo.
Yeah, I know it is. But it's like me kind of accepting that woo-woo is a part of my personality that I love.
I mean, how much stuff was considered woo-woo before it became a thing? I mean, think about probably every religion. Yeah. You know? Yeah. It's like, well, now there are religions that millions and millions of people practice.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So I'd love to be at some point in the future. I don't feel qualified at all yet. And I am that person who really, really, it's important to me to feel so qualified before I sell anything or any sort of monetary exchange happens. Yeah. And I think that's what's kept me so stuck with Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, because like, food is that one thing where I feel total and utter sovereignty. Like I feel like, I don't know.
In control?
Yeah.
You feel so qualified?
Yeah.
Because you are.
I would never say, yes, there's always things for me to learn in the kitchen, new techniques.
But you're a professional chef at this point.
That's how I feel. And I know, and it's kind of been, I've been navigating this frustration because there are a lot of people in spiritual self-development community, and it feels like they know a lot less than I do, and they're charging hundreds of dollars for. And I'm not judging them because I know that everyone has their own little thing to offer, and maybe like what they lack in like technical know-how, maybe they have like they're really good at pep talking people and making people feel good, right? Yeah. It's like the difference between you and me and what we have to offer to people. So I'm never judging anyone for what they're doing.
Unless you're Jake Paul, then you're ripping people off.
Yes. But, you know, for me, I'm just accepting that I like to feel a high degree of mastery over something before I am giving it to people.
Well, it's the same thing we talked about earlier in this episode with me and teaching lessons, right? Like I wanted to feel super qualified to be a teacher before I actually started offering it.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a good thing to do.
It is. I mean, you have to have confidence, right, in yourself. And you just because you see other people moving a little bit faster than you, which often happens because I'm a slow-moving person, except for in my brain. My brain moves too fast. My body, slow.
Sloth-like. But yeah, we all... Sorry, that wasn't meant to be offensive. Sloth-like.
They're cute. I like sloths.
I think they're cute, too. I don't even know what I was going to say. Oh, we all judge ourselves against other people, and it's it never turns out well.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing for hours every single day while Eric's watching a movie or reading about cryptocurrency, as I'm in my little corner with lots of blankets.
Right over there.
And I've just been learning a lot about astrology is my main focus. I want to learn a little bit more about human design. It's like a very new discipline, though, so there's really not that much. There's a lot of free information out there, especially on Instagram, but there's not nearly as much as about astrology, which has been practiced for, so long. Yeah. Such an ancient art. I've been learning more about tarot, which is like very new to me and still is like one of those areas that feels a little bit woo-woo,
a little bit out there.
But I'm really curious because I know tarot is also very archetypal, and I feel like there's a connection between all of these disciplines. And I've been learning a little bit about herbs, herbalism, and just starting to dive into like the chakra system and how that relates to music. Chakra.
With the little rolled R.
Yeah. And I can't wait to move, and like I would like to save up and buy a crystal singing bowl and learn
all 12 notes.
Well, that would be quite expensive, but one day I really want a shruti box, which is that mostly associated with Indian music, one of those droning instruments that sounds really cool. Mm-hmm. And I just want to get more experimental with music and see, just like I was just thinking about, like, how cool would it be if all of these things that, like, I'm always craving more time to study them. Like, I'm a bottomless pit. I could just take in as much of that information as I have time for.
And that's how you know it's the right thing to be studying and learning about.
Yeah, like, what if that could be part of my job? And I'm trying to remove the pressure from my mind of trying to define exactly what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But
it's just cool that I feel like really over the last few weeks we've both been figuring it out at such a advanced pace.
Yeah.
So, like, right now, this is what I think. Right now, our future is, together we make music, we do the podcast, mm-hmm. And then separately I'm teaching about music stuff, whether it's guitar lessons or music production, mm-hmm. and I'm still making freelance music or custom music freelance. And then you're kind of doing Sarah's Vegan Kitchen, cooking in the way you want and when you want, in a way that makes you happy. Mm-hmm. And you're reading people's charts and teaching them how they can go through life in a way that mm-hmm. makes them feel how hopefully we feel at that point.
Right. I mean, I just think the craziest thing is, like, it can really take so long, and so many layers have to be peeled back for some of us to just come back to what you always knew is true. Like, I've always been a little bit weird. Mm. I've always been interested in things that were hard to talk about with most people. I grew up in a very practical family, I would say. Not a lot of talk about emotions and mental illness and all of this stuff that is very, very near and dear to me. And I guess it would make sense that I tried so hard to make the food thing just work out forever. I just wanted to be like that food blogger. And we were talking about yesterday on the Lost episode, is like how I always thought money was my issue. And I would go and listen to money coaches on YouTube and Instagram. I'm like, how do I reframe my thinking so that I can make more money doing this? Because I was working so hard and never really, like, I never made that much money. And I'd compare myself to other food bloggers who'd make videos like, oh, this is how I built my food blog to 6 figures. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, holy shit, like, the day I can do that, I will be happy. Yeah. And it just felt so, like, earthy and practical to me. And I felt like if I could do that, then my life would make sense to my family and to other people. And it's at this point, having gone through a lot of painful experiences and sad girl blips, that I'm like, I'm going to be that weird person. And as soon as you can accept that, you actually realize there's a huge community there waiting for you. Mm-hmm. Like, the astrology community is massive. Human design community is growing day by day. And it's going to be really cool to be like one of those people getting into it when it is still like that new frontier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the more you can embrace your weirdness, I guess, is like, it's a thing you hear like thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. But, for me, it's very, very obvious, the weirdness. I have pink hair.
Hey, your hair's pink now, this episode.
So, my diet is very weird lately too, which is part of the reason why I am a little, hesitant to just show up on YouTube making the food that I really eat. Because I'm worried people are going to be like, this isn't accessible. I don't have the time to do that. And I'm like, I know, but...
And, like, it's not accessible to some people.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are things that are accessible to other people that aren't accessible to us.
Yeah.
And it's, so I totally understand those people's point of view, but it's just, you don't want to feign being that person who's always accessible anymore.
Yeah.
You want to just be yourself. And maybe some of the things you do or ingest aren't accessible to everyone because they live in the middle of Kansas and can't get ashwagandha easily. And it's like, yeah, that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. And then, like, there's that whole, this is kind of what we ended up talking about yesterday, where it got kind of out of control and stressful. Is
about
just
capitalism and society?
Yeah, understanding that each of us has privileges, and I feel very privileged to do what I do. And also, I'm not happy with it, and I feel privileged to have the health that I do, and also I want more. And also, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I just have a lot of empathy for everyone at whatever stage they're at, and I want to always be like responsible with what I'm talking about. And also, I'm just afraid of judgment like any other human. And I don't know. I think there is a lot of magic in just admitting what you love, though. So even for me to come on here and say, like, hey, I'm going to be an astrologer one day, like, it's hard, but it feels good to say, you know?
Yeah, because you're like releasing, you're letting go of this.
Yeah.
I don't know what word. You're just letting go of all the bullshit. Like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say it, and it's gonna happen.
Yeah. So if you listen to this far and you want some insights on your chart, you can email us. Or if you want some music production lessons or guitar lessons via Zoom, you can email us.
whatislifedudeshow@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Well, as we've, like we said earlier, yesterday after our podcast conversation, we had better conversations that built off of it, which were more like the conversation we're having now.
Yeah.
And we've noticed that all of the things we're getting into and thinking about lately are tying back into this discussion about society and capitalism and the world we live in with advertisements and advertisements and just all of these things. And that's, as we mentioned, kind of where we got stuck on yesterday's recording of the podcast.
Yeah.
And we just got in this loop of
we're all stuck.
Everything's bad.
We came in with no choices and we're stuck in this loop, and
I didn't really feel it until it was over that we were being like that. But our conversations do keep coming back to that because, like you were saying, you want to choose to go down this unconventional path that a lot of people don't understand and is out of the ordinary, right? Yeah. Astrology. Like, that's not quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
Right. And then I've been studying a lot about cryptocurrency. And if you don't know what cryptocurrency is, you probably have heard the word Bitcoin before. And crypto's basically, it's a way to decentralize currency in the world. Now, I'm not an expert on it by any means. I'm very new to it, but I'm one of those people who a few years ago thought it was some sort of like weird scam or something. Yeah. You're like, oh, you're going to put your money into this thing and you don't know where it's going and someone's going to steal your money. But basically, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. And I think they're building them just to, when I said decentralized currency, it means take it out of control, take it out of the government's control and kind of more in the people's control. As in, when the government controls the money and the government is basically working with all these corporations and these congressmen and senators are making deals and working with lobbyists and all that House of Cards stuff. It's like our money, it's safe on like a base level, but we don't really have control of how it's manipulated. So cryptocurrency exists to kind of take that away and put it back in the hands of the people. And it's so very anti-establishment, and I love it. Because you and I really, as different as we are, and as different as we grew up, we both really have that anti-establishment gene in us. And all of these roads we've been going down lead back to that. And I'm going to quickly touch on the Super Bowl because this is another anti-establishment conversation we had last night. But I don't watch football anymore. I used to watch football. I went to my first Jets game when I was 6 with my dad, and we went to 2 games a year, and it was amazing. And I loved the Jets, huge Jets fan. My room was painted green and white when I was a child. And now, over the last few years, I've just stopped watching because it's a little too aggressive, and I don't like the way the NFL is.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of reports, videos of domestic abusers in the NFL, and these players are just allowed. They're basically, if you're a big enough star and you say, I'm sorry publicly, even if there's some horrific footage of you being a domestic abuser, you're just allowed back, and people still buy your jerseys and everyone forgets about it. And then you have the Colin Kaepernick situation where he's basically been blacklisted by the NFL. No one has hired him to play for their team because he was the first person to take a stand against the injustices that black people in America face. And those things, plus some other little things, have really combined for me to just not be interested anymore. But yesterday I said, you know what? I'll watch the Super Bowl. We all watch the Super Bowl. We can make some buffalo tofu. It'll be a good time.
Right. And also, like, in the past, over the past couple of years since we've been living together, we would always go to, like, your family's house. And it would be like a little get together. We'd see your family and we'd snack, and it would be just like a nice fuzzy feelings associated with it.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's do that. It's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I felt so terrible as the game went on, and then afterwards I came upstairs where Sarah was playing piano, and I just told her I hated it, and I unless major things change, I'm never going to watch the Super Bowl again. I mean, that's probably a lie because I'll probably go see our friends and family, but if there's another circumstance where it's like, do I want to watch the game? No, I have no interest. The amount of advertisements in the game and the fact that all the commercials, the Super Bowl commercials, are this huge thing every year, and these huge corporations who don't need to advertise their product,
like Doritos
and
Pepsi.
Doritos hires Matthew McConaughey. I can't imagine how much money is going into these things just to have people who are already so powerful and so wealthy, everyone's just like slinging their money around just to show that they can. And there are other products out there that aren't being purchased by smaller companies, and other actors who aren't being hired because they just, let's hire Matthew McConaughey instead. The whole thing just reeks of this Hollywood money corporation thing. And it makes me feel terrible. It makes me feel emotionally drained.
Are you sure that wasn't the garlic knots, though?
I only had 2 or 3 very small garlic knots.
Right. I did make snacks. I made tofu and cashew ranch and
so good
garlic knots with our leftover pizza dough.
That was so good.
Yeah. And then I cleaned, and then I went upstairs and played piano, and then I started crying because I realized that I never make music anymore. And
that led us to this conversation we've had.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think one of the tipping points, and I don't want to harp on it because I don't want to get into that cyclical thing again, but they showed a commercial during the Super Bowl about how the NFL stands. I don't know. It was they're standing up for injustice and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, I think they donated some sum of money towards the cause.
It is such a bullshit move.
Yeah.
Because I just told the summarized story of Colin Kaepernick. I mean, people get so mad still when players in the NFL or MLB or any other sports organization, when they kneel during the national anthem or raise a fist or something. And yet the NFL just, they do the right thing by putting out a commercial. Oh, we donated some money. It's like, well,
right.
why don't these teams why don't you let this player, why doesn't someone hire him? He's still ripped to shreds, and he's a great athlete. Like, he can still play, Colin Kaepernick.
I think at this point he's kind of like
he's an activist
right
now.
Yeah, like when I looked him up yesterday, I was reading about him,
Yeah.
and he's listed as an activist and not a football player.
Just the cloak of so Sarah and I have been talking a lot about greenwashing, these companies that talk about being eco-friendly and making their packaging more sustainable and whatnot, but
They'll like make up certifications, or they'll like put badges on their packaging that aren't for a real certification, just to create like an air of like officialness about it.
yeah, they'll hire a graphic designer to make a logo that looks like an official certification of being eco-friendly.
Right.
And they slap it on and confuse everyone, and people are like, oh, this is fine to buy. That's greenwashing.
Yeah.
So I coined the term last night, woke washing, which is when you pretend to be woke in order to continue selling your product or otherwise make profit. And that's what the NFL was doing, where they said, look how woke we are. Black Lives Matter. But we actually don't think that as a league because of everything we've done historically.
Right.
And I came upstairs and said, I never want to watch football again.
I mean, I feel like now with social media, people are putting a lot of pressure on creators and brands to stand up for things that matter, which is like a double-edged sword a little bit, right? Because yes, I think people should definitely call out injustice and just do the right thing, right? Like, if you know what the right thing to do is, live in integrity. That's my whole thing, and that's what I'm trying so hard to do. And I'm being imperfect at it, but I'll call myself out. But the fact that people are like really aggressively calling brands out, I feel like has led to a lot of what they call performative activism.
Yeah.
They just want to virtue signal.
I think that's like, the actual term for woke washing.
Yeah, I'd rather let people's true nature come through. Like, I'd rather know. I'd rather not have brands pretending and possibly fooling people. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say all of that and get it out because it was clearly frustrating me, as you could hear. And the NFL thing, the cryptocurrency thing, the practicing astrology and taking a different course for a career that's non-standard, in my opinion, these are all funneled into just not going, not conforming and being anti-establishment.
Right. But not for nonconformity's sake. It's for being true to you.
Yeah, that's how I feel. You just talked about living in integrity.
Yeah.
And when we talk about all these things, I'm like, that feels like me.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be like.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what this podcast is about. Is just about us sharing things we learn about ourselves, and then maybe those lines of investigation help you do the same. And also by sharing how we're different, that you can see just two examples of the many, many ways that humans manifest. And it's cool.
If there's one thing I want people who listen to our podcast to take away, it's just how to comfortably be yourself and do what you want to do. Obviously it's easier said than done sometimes on a literal level, but that's all we're trying to do here.
Right.
Is we don't want to end up at the end of our lives thinking, well, what was all that? We want to say, we did all these things and we did them for a fucking reason. So we want everyone to do that. Right. However that may look for you.
After Eric finished watching the movie yesterday, we were talking about the situation that the Somali pirates were in. And I was just feeling really sad because it's like as difficult as things feel for us sometimes, right? I'm mentally ill. So it's very easy to get lost in that. And it's useful, I think, to have that outside perspective that there's some people that come in with a lot less choice and a lot more danger. and they don't have nearly as much mobility as we do. So I have to, gratitude is really important, you know, not toxic positivity, but just taking moments to, when you feel okay, right? When you feel okay enough to take a little account of what is good for you and how cool it is that I have the freedom to pursue a weird career. Like, how cool.
Yeah, and that I have the privilege of, I got laid off my job last January and fortunately found myself in a financial position to say, oh, I'm going to try to start this freelance music business, and now I'm getting the teaching opportunity, and I've just been figuring it out for the last year, and I'm privileged enough to have survived. And I'm not worried about not surviving that whole time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's really, it's cool. It's cool to understand what freedom we do have. And when you frame it that way and you think about people who have less, it really is your responsibility to not squander those opportunities, I would say. And try to help as many people as you can, and to use the power and privilege that you do have to impact, you know, someone's life for the better.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up, because I feel like that was kind of a culmination, I feel like it was I personally, my energy was very climactic at the end, because I don't know if you could see the water in my eyes accumulating when I was ranting about that whole thing, but it really, really gets me fired up.
Yeah.
Can we talk about something that's a little more technical, housekeeping in a way, that we've been talking about on the podcast, which is potentially starting a Patreon. Can we chat about this for like 1 sec?
Sure.
So, as you listeners know, we have the supporter shout out every week, and you can go on Anchor and support us with a monthly donation, right? You heard the blurb, you heard the recording. Yeah. But we've been talking about maybe starting a Patreon once we move, and offering some extra content. If you're not familiar with Patreon, you basically you donate monthly to a creator, and depending on which tier of money, how much you donate per month, you get different and more special rewards that only Patreon supporters can see.
Only patriots can see these things.
Only patrons.
Do you love America?
Or any country, right?
Patriots of any country.
Is patriotic strictly about America? No, right? Didn't think so. Great. So we kind of wanted to ask you listeners what you would like us to offer if we do extra content. Basically, we're thinking extra episodes of the podcast once we move and we have our own space again, doing some sort of like monthly vlog, or Eric and Sarah cook something together and just have a good time. The options are endless and also hard to think of. So,
right. I mean, we definitely appreciate the support that we get through Anchor. We just don't like that we can't really, right? We don't get your emails or anything. So if we were able to share through Anchor, we would. Yeah. But I feel bad not offering some extras for supporters. Yeah. So.
I mean, it's amazing that we have however many supporters we have right now, and you guys just donate because you love the free podcast so much. Yeah. Like, that's absolutely incredible. Yeah. And we're like, you know, once all these episodes are just us clearing the shit out of our lives and out of our brains. And what we want to bring in is the ability, the physical ability and the emotional ability to record extra episodes of the podcast and make a vlog where we do something fun.
Or like a mukbang or a Q&A. Yeah. I don't know.
Cover songs.
Right.
Things that are exclusive to people who donate. So ruminate on that. Send us an email, whatislifedudeshow@gmail.com, and just give us ideas. We may or may not use them. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Nope.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. I'm so glad we did this episode again.
Me too.
Because I feel great about it.
Good.
And I hope you listeners do too, /viewers.
Yes.
We'll talk to you next week.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.